In the last section of this program, we showed you the basic equipment used for climbing wooden poles and various ways to ensure that the equipment fits properly. In this part of the program, we'll continue to look at how climbing equipment is worn, the basic techniques for sharpening, gauging, and testing gaffes, and you'll learn one method of replacing the gaffes on climbers that have replaceable gaffes. We'll also see how the equipment is inspected to make sure it is safe for climbing. Since we have a lot of ground to cover, let's start with how to put the climbers on. First of all, you need to put the right climber on the right leg and the left climber on the left leg. This may sound pretty basic, but it's a common mistake that new people make. These climbers are stamped R and L to indicate right and left. We'll start with the right climber. Place the climber on the right foot so the longest portion of the climber is on the inside of the right leg. This ensures that the gaff is in the proper position for climbing. Next, pull up your pant leg and hold the excess material. This does two things. It leaves room at the knees so that you can bend your leg without the material of your pants binding, and it smooths the pants around the calf, keeping it from chafing the skin while climbing. Now, buckle the calf strap at the top of the climber just above the knee. It's important that this strap is snug, but not uncomfortably tight. The calf strap keeps the climber from slipping when you climb. Finally, adjust and tighten the foot strap. This is done by passing the tongue or the longest part of the strap around the back of the heel and over the top of the shoe, and then buckling the strap over the top of the foot. All straps should be secure in their keepers so that they don't hang loose. This eliminates the potential for causing an accident. Once you have the right climber on, repeat the process for the left climber. For your comfort and safety, remember to place the longest portion of the climber on the inside of your leg. Pull up on the pant leg and fold the excess material against the back of the leg. Finally, all straps should be snug and the ends of the straps secure. First, you may find that having the climbers strapped to your leg is cumbersome and somewhat uncomfortable. With experience and patience, this feeling will go away and you will begin to think of climbers as a natural extension of your foot and leg. Now, there are some general rules that you need to follow. First, you should never wear climbers while riding in a truck, working in a bucket, or walking around your work area. The major reason for this is the gaffes. Gaffes are sharp metal spikes that can inflict some painful cuts if you're not careful. By the same token, the gaffes can badly damage the liners in buckets and the interior of your truck. So always wait until you are ready to climb before putting on your climbers. The second rule is that gaff guards should be placed over your gaffes when you're not climbing. Gaff guards protect the gaffes from damage while you're wearing the climbers. They also keep you from being stabbed. Finally, the boots you use for climbing should have substantial heels. This keeps the stirrup to the climbers from slipping and makes it more comfortable to work on a pole. By following these three simple rules, you can prevent accidents and ensure safe and comfortable climbing. Now, no matter how careful you are, if you use your climbers, sooner or later the gaffes are going to get dull and the edges of the gaffes are going to get nicked. When this happens, the gaffes need to be sharpened with a file. The gaffes also need to be gauged to make certain that the sharpening hasn't changed the shape or angle of the gaff. Let's look at some of the basic techniques for sharpening and gauging gaffes. We'll start by looking at a typical gaff. Gaffes are attached to climbers at a specific angle necessary for safe climbing. The gaffes are also shaped by the manufacturer in a specific way to support your weight on a pole. Under no circumstances should you ever attempt to change the angle or shape of your gaffes. For this reason, when sharpening a gaff, you should only file the gaff, never on its top ridge. Here, Bo is demonstrating to Jeff the proper technique for sharpening. The file should be placed flat against the underside of the gaff and moved across the gaff towards the point. The climber should be held firmly in place while sharpening, either by hand or by using a vise. Notice that he uses light, even strokes with the file and always files toward the point of the gaff. This ensures that the shape of the gaff will remain unchanged during sharpening. Once the gaff has been sharpened, a special gaff gauge is used to check the shape, thickness, and length of the gaffes. Every manufacturer makes a gauge that is to be used for testing their specific gaffes. Here, the gaff gauge is being used to check the thickness and length of the gaff at the specific point. Lines on the gauge indicates the minimum length of the gaff at the point of measurement. The gaff is checked at various points using the gauge. If the gaff fails to meet the minimum requirements indicated on the gaff gauge, the climber in this case will have to be replaced. Other types of climbers have provisions for replacing only the gaff. Let's take a look at one example of how this can be done. On these climbers, the gaffs are held in place by two set screws. When the screws are removed, the old gaff can be removed from the climber and replaced with a new one. When the gaff is properly positioned, the set screws are replaced and the climbers can be used again. Earlier in this program, we said that one of the requirements for climbing is to develop the proper mental attitude. We told you that the first step in developing this attitude is to know your equipment. The second step is to test and inspect your equipment so that you know it's going to do the job it's designed to do. A simple test to make sure the gaffs on your climbers are shaped properly is called a plane test. Here, Bo will show Jeff how to perform a plane test. Start by placing the longest portion of the climber flat against a wooden pole or board. Then push the climber down. If the gaff is properly shaped, it should begin to dig into the wood before it's traveled an inch along the surface. The plane test is something that you may not have to do often, but it is one way that you can determine that your gaffs are at the correct angle for climbing. Trusting your equipment is an important part of developing the proper mental attitude for climbing. One way to achieve this is to inspect your equipment before you use it. Bo's getting ready to give a climbing demonstration. Before he puts on his belt, he looks at the buckle to make sure it's not bent or damaged in any way. He also looks at the stitching and leather on his belt to make sure it isn't cut, cracked, or torn. A damaged body belt could break while climbing and cause a serious accident. Bo also checks his safety strap for signs of wear or damage. Bo checks the adjustment holes on the straps for wear or stretching due to strain. The used strap on the right has an adjustment hole that has been stretched. The strap on the left shows a new adjustment hole in good condition. A torn or stretched adjustment hole could slip or tear loose when strain is placed on the belt. It's easier to replace a safety strap than it is to recover from a fall if the strap should break. Bo also inspects the straps and pads to make sure they are in good condition. He also checks the rivets on the loops that hold the straps in place. Finally, Bo checks his gaffs. Only when Bo is sure that his equipment is in good condition will he attempt to climb. In this part of the program, we've shown you how to put on your climbers, how to sharpen, gauge, and test them, how gaffs can be replaced, and what to look for when inspecting your equipment. Making sure your equipment is in good working condition is the first step in developing the proper mental attitude for climbing. In just a few minutes, we'll watch Bo as he begins teaching Jeff the basic techniques for climbing. For now, though, read over the material in your text on the use, maintenance, and inspection of climbing equipment and answer the question.